If I could look directly in the eyes of European policymakers, I would tell them that every time you shake hands on this deals, you are telling us that our lives matter less than your policy. You are not just funding border control, you are funding the brutality. You need to stop all these deals if you really, really know the value of human beings.
What do you call that? It's really hard to imagine that. I'm still waiting for that peace agreement.
Where do EU borders really start? We've collected some incredibly powerful accounts, interviews with activists and experts on the ground, to try and paint you a picture that's much more complex and honestly more disturbing than what you might think.
We will hear directly from activists and people on the ground in countries like Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, Western Sahara, Albania, Serbia, and Bosnia. People who are living and resisting this reality of the EU outsourcing its violence, where the EU's systematic human rights violations can still happen on a daily basis, but just with almost zero oversight.
What we're going to hear today are just snippets of the powerful stories we'll be exploring in depth throughout the following episodes, where we will untangle this web of bloody deals, look at the real human cost, the legal and ethical problems, and of course, the bigger geopolitical games being played. My name is Ines.
And my name is Istakoza, and you're listening to On The Move. So we start in Libya, a country where the EU has invested billions of euros to stop migration. To understand what the EU investments in Libya actually look like on the ground, we spoke with Salahuddin Joma, a Sudanese activist from refugees in Libya.
So after hours in the sea, a ship appears, and it's not a European rescue boat, but it is the Libyan Coast Guard that is trained and paid by the European Union. They start shouting and shooting at your boat. So some of the migrants drown, and the rest of them are pulled back to Libya and locked inside the detention centers that are built by funds of European Union. I'm also one of the people who has been detained, locked inside the prison for 1 year and a half, just because I was defending for my rights and the rights of others. So I was locked inside the prison. I was tertiary. I was beaten and I was forced to do hard labor for 1 year and a half. And every time they were asking me to pay ransom to be released, but unfortunately, I didn't have anything to pay for them. So that's why I was forced to continue working for them until 1 year and a half. And then finally, I was released. So the same thing that is taking place there with the others. So it's directly in a live example and experience that I'm telling you today. So you need to recognize and you need to understand what does it mean. I know that someone cannot feel the pain of the injury that is not in his own body, but you need to at least try and to understand the emotions of others and do something so that those people at least can survive from these violations and so on. And it's not only in Libya, I can say, even in Tunisia or even the situation in Egypt. And the situation is also very difficult for them in the living and so on.
We've seen similar agreements with Tunisia. These date back to the 90s, with the first being signed in 1998. Here, the EU and Italy signed an agreement on the readmission of Tunisian migrants and those who are transiting through Tunisia to mark the beginning of a long series of agreements to manage migration, as they call it, leading the way to the recent Memorandum of Understanding signed in 2023. Heba, a Tunisian activist supporting people on the move in Tunisia, spoke to us about how the memorandum has changed the situation dramatically.
So
instance, always there have been fundings from Italy and France and Germany to Tunisia to buy equipment, radars, etc. But since 2023, the equipment and everything that the Garde Nationale, as we call it, so it's a paramilitary entity affiliated with the Ministry of Interior, started to have way more power than before, way more equipment, way more recruitment, but also a huge shift in the strategy of how to deal with migration or with boats departing at sea. The violence from the National Guard or from the Garde Nationale started before this memorandum, but this memorandum basically whitewashed all the crimes that were happening at sea. And the EU said, yes, it is fine to kill people as long as it's far away from our borders. If they are in the territorial Tunisian waters, we don't see it, we don't know it, and we don't care. I mean, they never cared about the global south, but this confirms again that they really don't care. And so the consequences of this deal was the normalization, even if the killing of migrants was normalized before, became even more normalized. Also about the deportation, you have the president clearly saying and proudly saying that we have deported 400 migrants. This is also a very huge step, because before the Tunisian state would deny these criminal acts, but after this, the state itself affirms, confirms, and is proudly doing it.
These people are pouring into Tunisia by the hundreds every day. Today we deported about 400 people through the eastern border, and there is ongoing coordination between Tunisia and neighboring countries.
In 2023, just a few months before the signing of the memorandum, the Tunisian President Kais Saied delivered a speech during a National Security Council meeting that included several racist remarks that triggered a wave of violence against Black Africans in Tunisia. He described undocumented Black Africans as, quote-unquote, a part of a criminal plan to change Tunisia's demographic makeup and to turn the country into a purely African country. He also accused those migrants of causing violence, crimes, and unacceptable practices, and called for measures to hold their entry into the country.
We are proud of our African identity, but today they want to change the demographic composition of Tunisia. It is a plot to attack the Tunisian state and the Tunisian people.
After the speech, Saied gave the green light, basically, for a lot of people to attack any migrant. In their houses, places where they work, there were cases of rape, of women getting raped, of trying to burn houses. So he with his racist speech, he gave a green light. That also was not just attacking migrants, but also attacking civil society and activists that are supporting them, accusing them of conspiring against the state, accusing them of getting foreign money from the EU. Ironically, Black Tunisians also suffered a lot during this period. They have always suffered from racism, of course, but during this period specifically, there was one Black person who was about to get deported to Libya or Algeria. I forgot, because he was a Black Tunisian. So these agreements as well was affecting a lot also between Tunisians. So basically the EU is just whitewashing Assad state, or the current authoritarian situation we are in, as if our voices are not heard. Whatever we do, we are basically back to a dictatorship. And as just like with Ben Ali dictatorship, it couldn't have been possible without the EU money. So is Assad, the authoritarian regime cannot be possible without the EU funding.
Earlier this year, Morocco was officially included on the European Union's first ever list of safe countries of origin, making it even more difficult for Moroccan citizens to claim asylum in EU countries, meaning their asylum claims can be fast-tracked and rejected more easily under the new policy.
To understand more, we spoke to Mohammed Dihani, Sahrawi political activist, former political prisoner and a victim himself of years of torture and repression in Moroccan jails.
If we consider the broader agreements between the EU and Morocco over the last 10 years, we are talking about dozens of deals worth over 800 million euros in total. But what stands out is that between 60 and 65% of those funds are funneled directly to Morocco's Ministry of the Interior. This money isn't used only for border control or to manage migration. Instead, it's also used to consolidate the state's internal power, suppressing civil society, silencing dissent, and cracking down on political opposition to the regime. It's an issue that, within the European public sphere, remains largely unspoken. Let me give you a concrete example. The Rif region in the North Morocco. This is a region where people openly demand self-determination. They do not see themselves as fully integrated into the Moroccan state, and in the past, they even declared an independent republic. Well, EU funds are also used to suppress these kinds of social movements that call for economic justice, political rights, and social reform. But the issue goes even deeper. What's shocking is that it reaches, albeit indirectly, even the European Union's legislative bodies. Take the European parliaments, for example. It's supposed to approve deals with third countries only if they respect human rights. Yet Morocco maintains a strong and strategic presence within the corridors of international diplomacy. There is solid evidence of this influence. Just look at the Qatargate scandal. Behind the scenes, through lobbying, negotiation, and financial dealings, Morocco was directly involved, working with a number of European parliamentarians and other powerful actors.
The relationship between Morocco and Europe shows how migration is weaponized for political leverage, how those agreements are never about people, but are entirely about political gains.
Morocco literally used migrants as bargaining chip in their negotiations with Europe. There are instances where, in response to political statements from Europe, from Spain to be more specific, migrants have been allowed or actually encouraged to storm the borders at places like Ceuta or Melilla. Entire groups of people were literally pushed to death in a very dirty political game.
Politically, economically, and socially, Morocco is seen as a key strategic partner for the European Union, especially when it comes to the crimes committed against migrants. One of the most brutal examples is the Melilla massacre, where more than 60 people lost their lives. The numbers may vary, but we know for certain that at least 37 died, most of them from Sudan. And even today, Morocco's Human Rights Association continues to report cases of forced disappearance, people who were taken, vanished, and never heard from again. Just a few months after this tragedy that shocked the world, a European Union delegation arrived in Morocco to sign a new agreement worth over 600 million euros. Around the same time, between 2022 and 2023, similar deals were made with Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries, but with much smaller amounts. And yet, migration flows from Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia far exceed those from Morocco. So why the difference? Now we need to focus on something critical. Morocco is officially considered a safe country. This allows the EU to push forward powerful agreements and funding programs. Take migration, for example, nearly 1 billion euros have been allocated to Morocco over the past decade. But if you look at the ground reality, watch the official footage, you will see tens of thousands of people stuck in the mountains around Nador and Al Hoceima. These aren't just any mountains. The UN statement estimates over 70,000 hectares are used to grow kif and hashish there. Migrants are exploited, trapped in modern-day slavery, forced to work as cheap labor, living in tents, hiding among the hills. And then there is political use of migration as a weapon. If the Spanish Prime Minister or Foreign Minister says something about Western Sahara, the Reef, or any issue Morocco deems sensitive, right after the statement, people are suddenly pushed to storm the borders of Melilla and Ceuta. Some die. Their death become pawns in a political game. And when Spain softens its stance, Morocco reacts. Police and soldiers crack down on migrants violently, fatally. The evidence is there. Look at the reports from Nador, Al Hoceima, Tangier, Titwan. Authorities themselves encourage people to leave. You can even hear them saying, if you want to go to Spain, the door is open. It's a cruel game played at two levels, punishing European on one side and controlling Morocco's own population on the other. Out of all the files Morocco brings to the EU table, terrorism, security, diplomacy, migration is the sharpest weapon. Every 7 or 8 months, thousands of minors are sent out, and Morocco knows exactly how the Spanish asylum system works.
نعرف نظام اللجوء في إسبانيا كذا كل ما فيما يتعلق بالقاصرين.
قدام السور قدام اللي بنيه قدام السور قدام اللي معليه قدام السور قدام اللي بنيه.
The human cost of Europe's outsourced violence is not just paid by people on the move, but also the local populations of those partner countries. Migrants are trapped, abused, or killed, and locals are left with governments armed and funded to repress their own people.
Those funds from the EU are not just used to build fences, but they are also used to build prisons, not for people on the move, but for entire societies that are forced under surveillance and repression. Egypt makes this painfully clear.
Noor Khalil, Egyptian activist and director of Refugees Platform in Egypt, explained how European policies shape daily life, not only for people on the move, but also for Egyptians themselves.
The EU is investing its money on militarization and empowering security agencies, committing crimes and violations, creating this crisis in the country, getting more reasons to leave this country. There are no fair trials in the country. Torture is systematic. So you can't mention Egypt as a safe country for Egyptians, for a region, or as a third safe countries outside this even perspective about list of safe countries or third safe countries. It's illegal totally. But if we are looking at the Egypt case, you can't mention or imagine Egypt with this condition as a safe country. With numbers, we saw that increasing after 2021, increasing again on the Egyptian arrivals to the EU, and it came as one of the first nationalities of the new arrivals in the last 3-4 years. So your projects, your agreements, even with this violation cost, is not working, is not going on the way that you want. So you are costing, the cost is more violations, the cost is more movement, and the cost is more risks and people life on this political game that the Egyptian government and the EM using migrants and migrants' bodies and migrants' lives as political card to negotiate with the EU, and the EU is giving this space for authoritarian regimes and the militia to pushing them and to blackmail them through the migrants card, like what we are seeing with the Libyan militia, like what we saw from the Tunisian authority. It's the same model, and the same model just causing more violations, and these violations causing bad political and economic situation, which is making people moving from their place.
All of that is done to stop people from moving, except that you can never stop people from moving.
So with all of this complicity in the violations, EU is not doing its target of preventing irregular immigration, because irregular immigration is like the water falling from a mountain. You can't stop it. If you stop away, the water will try to find another way, even with more difficulties. So in reality, the investment on these security agencies and on militarization, in supporting and giving political coverage and adopting the Egyptian government propaganda, it's gonna be on the shoulders of the Egyptian themselves.
وكمان قدام اللي واقف يحمي وكمان قدام اللي واقف يحمي.
It's almost too much to comprehend, but it doesn't really stop there, does it?
Even for those who make it past those borders, the journey is far from over. I mean, Europe's borders just get closer, yeah, but the policies get even more brutal.
We heard from Sneža, an activist with No Name Kitchen in Serbia. She described how pushbacks and daily violence are normalized at Europe's doors.
A lot of people died in Serbia, but nobody was processed for that. Nobody's imprisoned for that. We had last year in August 12 people that drowned when boat flipped. The people who survived that were saying to us the Serbian police was pushing people back to the river. Back in 2023, end of 2023, like where most of the camps were open and there was a lot of people in Serbia, and kind of just before the elections, I'm assuming that there was a pressure from outside, so they moved all the people from the north to the south and they closed all those camps. But actually they are not officially closed. They're all on the standby, which means they all receive some funds still, but nobody can stay there. Currently there are 5 camps that are open, but the state of each of them is quite different, I guess. And in some, like the hygienic conditions or the medical conditions are terrible. A lot of people have skin disease because of hygiene in the camp. In Sjenica, for example, there is quite a lot of people with special medical needs or psychological needs. Nobody is taking care of that. Yeah, I mean, there are some organizations trying to, but the problem is that you kind of need to get approved to be there, and then the commissariat is kind of choosing who they want to be present, and if you are present, then you're very limited to what you can do. Otherwise, you're just gonna get kicked out, and then there is no, like, be present there. So, for example, like legal help, it's not provided by anyone except like one local organization. So, like, if they see like something that is not normal, regular, that they want to report something, they cannot really do it, because then they will be like, okay, then you don't want you in the camp anymore. So then people who want to apply for asylum and need legal help cannot get it anymore.
The situation is not any different in Bosnia, which has become another parking lot for Europe. People get stuck in camps that are often overcrowded and in remote areas with poor conditions, or as residents of those camps describe them, jails.
We have collected testimonies from people who live or have lived there, and now you will hear from them directly about what life is like inside.
everybody at the camp have a mental problem. Like you find yourself in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the mountains, treating you like an animals. You will be a lunatic. You will be. No one is in his good mind at the camp. Everybody is going crazy. Like if you spend just 1 month, you will be crazy at the camp. It's like a prison. It's like prison in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the mountains.
It's not a place for taking rest. It's a place to taking stress and depression and anxiety.
It's living hell. Like if you smell the smell, you will puke. Literally, it was like I can show it to you. Like I can take photos, and you will see by yourself. Like
It's not a camp; it's a jail. I can't tell any word inside the camp. If I told someone the camp is no good, or I need something, or that's you need to make that, it's I be outside the camp. Always we are afraid. Always we are afraid to be outside the camp.
They are getting proper funding from European Union, but it's totally corruption here. They didn't spend money on the camp. They just put money on the pocket. Very bad food. I'm sorry to say, but I have enough. I have to say thanks to God. But is that true? Very bad.
give us like a plastic bag, and sometimes it's all what's in the plastic bags is butter and bread and one small rotten apple.
عالسور واللي بني واللي معلي واللي بيحمي عالسور واللي بني واللي معلي واللي بيحمي عالسور واللي
In Albania, we are seeing a new and very specific model of externalization.
Yeah, this one is quite different. It's very different, actually. It's basically Italian law and Italian jurisdiction applying inside centers that are built by Italy on Albanian soil.
That's meant for people rescued at sea by Italian authorities. Disembarkation, identification, initial screening. And the idea is people get held there while their asylum claims are processed. And if it's rejected, they face deportation directly from Albania. They don't even go to Italy first.
Alexia, an activist from ZAN Collective, an anti-racist, anti-fascist, trans-feminist and queer collective of Albanian activists in Italy, explained to us the Italy-Albania deal and what it means for people's rights.
Italy has built a prison for migrants where human rights are violated daily. In these centers, the Italian jurisdiction and law will apply, despite being on Albanian soils. It creates effectively an extraterritorial zone of Italian authority. The Italy-Albania agreement was signed in November 2023. By the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama. And it is framed as a bilateral cooperation on migration management. And the core components include the construction and operation of two kinds of centers. One in the port of Shenzhen, whose facilities serve as a site for disembarkation and identification procedures for migrants that are rescued by Italian authorities and then sent to Albania. In this facility, in the hotspot of Shenzhen, they undergo these initial identification, medical screening, security checks where authorities assess whether they are vulnerable persons, and in this case, they have to be sent back immediately to Italy, or they are eligible for transfer to Gjader. Now, in Gjader, we have the second facility. Gjader is a very remote area in the county of Lej in Albania, and it's a former military air base. And here we find the second facility, which is basically a detention center, a CPR, where migrants are held during the processing of their asylum claim. The site is deliberately isolated, which makes it difficult for civil society, journalists, or whoever to monitor the treatment of people there and intervene legally.
And what happens there is that their asylum claim is processed, and those claims who are rejected, the people whose claim is rejected, they will be deported directly from Albania to their country of origin or any other country of transit. So in these centers, the Italian jurisdiction and law will apply despite being on Albanian soils. Giorgia Meloni has stated that this agreement will be a solution to Italy's migration crisis. She claimed that this will reduce pressure on Italian reception center, but also discourage people from coming to Italy. We had Ursula von der Leyen, who said that this is a great model, that they will try to implement this even in other countries. So it became, the Albanian model to follow. But of course, this entails a lot of human rights violation, but also international law violation and European law violations, not only from the legal structure of the agreement, but also from how it is being implemented on the ground, which is very problematic. The principle of no refoulement has already been violated because on the 8th of May, we had the first deportation from Albania, where Egyptians were deported from the airport of Tirana to Egypt. So in this case, the principle of no refoulement, which is enshrined in the Article 33 of the Refugee Conventions, was breached. And basically, as we know, the principle of no refoulement prohibits states from returning individuals to country where they would face persecution, torture, inhuman treatment, and so on. So under this agreement, there is a serious risk that these asylum seekers may be returned without a proper assessment of their claims. Then the human rights violation. This is a very serious topic. The conditions in the center of Shenzhen and Jadar are extremely poor. They mirror, of course, the Italian CPR. So there are reports of overcrowding, self-harm, lack of medical support, violence. There is no accountability, no transparency. Migrants are treated as logistical problems and not humans, deporting people in handcuffs, detaining them in isolation, pushing them to self-harm. I mean, it's a disgrace, but this is the EU.
The voices we heard today tell one story. Europe's borders are designed to break people, pushing them as far as possible, no matter the human cost. But again, people keep moving, keep resisting, and we will keep fighting.
Thank you to all our guests. In the next episode, we go deeper into the reality in Libya, Europe's most brutal outsourced frontier. My name is Estacosa.
And my name is Ines. And this was On the Move, a podcast by No Name Kitchen. Thank you for listening.
عالسور واللي بني واللي معلي واللي بيحمي عالسور